The laughter started before she even finished her sentence. "I just want to see my balance," the elderly woman said softly, holding a worn debit card between trembling fingers. A few people in line smiled awkwardly. One man openly chuckled. But the loudest laugh came from the sharply dressed millionaire standing behind her. He glanced at her faded coat, her scuffed shoes, and the reusable grocery bag hanging from her wrist. Then he shook his head as if he had already decided exactly who she was. "Before we go any further, tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional human stories with unexpected turns, stay with me until the end and consider subscribing to Kindness Journey." This one took a direction nobody in that bank saw coming. The woman's name was Odessa Harper. She was 73 years old and visited the same small community bank in Cedar Falls, Iowa, every Thursday afternoon. Most people barely noticed her. She lived alone in a modest one-story house on the edge of town. She drove a 12-year-old sedan with a dented bumper. She clipped coupons. She never bought expensive coffee. To most people, Odessa looked like someone carefully stretching a fixed retirement income. The millionaire behind her was Grant Whitaker, a real estate developer whose face appeared regularly in local business magazines. He was successful, confident, and accustomed to being recognized wherever he went. That afternoon, he was in a hurry. The line moved slowly, and Odessa's transaction seemed to be taking forever. When she finally reached the teller, she smiled politely. "Would you mind checking my account balance for me?" The teller, a young woman named Brianna, nodded. "Of course." Grant checked his watch dramatically. Someone behind him sighed. Odessa apologized. "Sorry, everyone." "No worries," Brianna said warmly. But Grant couldn't help himself. "Well," he said with a smirk, "let's hope the number isn't too shocking." A few nervous laughs escaped from the line. Odessa simply looked at him. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just curious. As if she were trying to understand why a grown man found pleasure in belittling a stranger. Then Brianna's expression changed. Her eyes narrowed slightly at the screen. She blinked once. Then twice. "Is everything okay?" Odessa asked. "Yes," Brianna said carefully. The young teller looked confused. Very confused. Grant noticed it too. "What happened?" he joked. "Did she break the machine?" More laughter. But Brianna wasn't laughing. She turned the monitor slightly toward herself again and quietly called for her manager. Now the bank had everyone's attention. Within seconds, the branch manager appeared. He looked at the screen. Then immediately straightened his posture. "What seems to be the issue?" Odessa asked. "No issue at all, Miss Harper." His tone had changed completely. Grant's smile faded. Something strange was happening. The manager leaned closer to Odessa. "Would you mind stepping into my office for a moment?" "Oh dear," Odessa said. "Did I do something wrong?" "Not at all." The manager almost sounded nervous. "Please." Odessa followed him toward the office. Before the door closed, Grant caught a glimpse of the monitor. Just enough to see a number. At first he thought he had read it incorrectly. Then his stomach dropped. The account balance contained more digits than he could process in a single glance. Millions. Many millions. The door closed. The bank fell silent. Grant stood frozen. He replayed every word he had spoken during the last 5 minutes. Suddenly they sounded much less amusing. 10 minutes later, Odessa emerged from the office carrying a folder. The manager escorted her personally. Everyone watched. Grant couldn't stop staring. As she passed, he finally spoke. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking." She paused. "Yes? Was that actually your account?" The question sounded ridiculous the moment it left his mouth. Odessa smiled. Yes. Grant swallowed. I'm sorry. She studied him for a moment. For what? For laughing. For assuming. For being rude. The woman nodded slowly. That's kind of you to admit. Then she walked out. Most people would have let the moment end there. Odessa didn't. Because the next morning, she appeared unexpectedly at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for one of Grant's newest developments. Grant nearly dropped his coffee when he saw her. What are you doing here? Odessa smiled. I was invited. By who? The board. Grant frowned. What board? The one funding your project. Confusion spread across his face. Then came the real surprise. One of the event organizers approached. Miss Harper, everyone's ready for your remarks. Your remarks. Grant felt the ground shift beneath him. Over the next 20 minutes, he learned something nobody in town knew. 40 years earlier, Odessa and her late husband had built a small agricultural equipment company in a rented garage. When larger corporations came offering buyouts, they refused. Instead, they expanded patiently. Eventually they sold the company for a staggering amount and quietly invested the proceeds through a private family foundation. No interviews. No publicity. No luxury lifestyle. No social media. Just steady giving. Scholarships. Community programs. Housing assistance. Food banks. Medical grants. For decades, Odessa had donated millions without attaching her name to any of it. Including the development project Grant was celebrating. In fact, her foundation was one of its largest financial backers. After the ceremony ended, Grant approached her again. This time there was no arrogance in his voice. Only curiosity. I don't understand something. What's that? You could live anywhere. Yes. You could own anything. Yes. But you still shop with coupons. Odessa laughed softly. They still work. Grant smiled despite himself. No, seriously. She looked toward the crowd. Do you know what happens when people see wealth before they see you? He shook his head. They stop meeting you. The answer lingered between them. She continued. When people think you're important, they often treat you differently. I learned a long time ago that money is useful, but it's a terrible way to discover who someone truly is. Grant looked down. Because he knew exactly what she meant. A week later, he visited her house. Not because of business. Not because of funding. Because he wanted to apologize properly. They sat on her small front porch drinking iced tea. Grant confessed something he had never admitted publicly. He had spent years chasing bigger deals, bigger headlines, bigger recognition. And somewhere along the way, he had started measuring people by appearances. Odessa listened quietly. Then she pointed toward an old wind chime hanging from the porch. See that? Grant nodded. My husband made it before he passed away. Cost almost nothing. It's still one of my favorite things I own. A breeze moved through the yard. The chime sang softly. Funny, Grant said. What? The most valuable thing here probably isn't worth much money. Odessa smiled. Now you're starting to understand. Months later, Grant launched a new scholarship fund for local students. He named it after neither himself nor Odessa. He simply funded it and let the students shine. When reporters asked why, he remembered an elderly woman standing in a bank line holding a worn debit card. And for the first time in years, he answered honestly. Because not everything valuable needs attention. The laughter that began that day in the bank never completely left his memory. Neither did the image of Odessa asking a simple question. I just want to see my balance. What nobody realized was that the most important balance wasn't the one on the screen. It was the balance between wealth and humility, success and kindness, appearances and truth. And that was the number that changed Grant's life forever. If you were in Grant's position, what would you have done after that moment in the bank? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if stories like this remind you of the quiet power of kindness, subscribe to Kindness Journey for more emotional human stories.